Good afternoon, welcome to this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee. The first item on the agenda is the
Hello, sorry, have we lost the sound?
Sorry, Councillor Simpson. It appears that Amy has gone off the feed, but oh, she's back.
She's back.
Please, apologies for technology issues. Could I call for nominations for chair for the meeting, please?
I nominate Councillor Simpson.
Thank you. And is that seconded?
Yes, seconded.
Thank you. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, and welcome everybody to this licensing panel hearing this afternoon in the London Borough of Merton. I'm just going to ask the legal advisor, if I may, to inform everybody about our short briefing prior to the commencement of this hearing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so the committee meet to read the papers, review them, and prepare for the hearing. No legal advice is provided. Or any legal advice would only be provided at the end in deliberations in due course, and obviously it would be recorded within the minutes or the decision notice. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Can I just ask you also, legal advisor, to confirm the process for questioning and whether there have been any requests by anybody for any adjournment to this afternoon's proceedings?
I'm not aware of any adjournment request, and the procedure is in the procedure itself within the papers. So obviously the applicant will go first. You will ask questions of them, and you will go through the process of then allowing those objecting to ask questions if they choose to, and then obviously you'll go through their representations. As I understand it, there are no responsible authority speaking, so you will go straight to residents for them to put in their representations, and eventually you will get to the stage where you will sum up, you will allow the applicant to sum up the case.
Yes.
But obviously that's within the procedure you have in front of you.
Thank you. So is the licensing officer present?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any technical issues that you feel should be brought to our attention this afternoon?
No, I have no technical issues to bring before you. I'm happy to give a short intro to the application if that would help at this point.
I think it would indeed.
Okay, I'll proceed. Thank you, Chair. Tesco Stores Limited have applied for a premises licence in respect of a new supermarket to be located at Sandham House, Boundary Business Court, Church Road, Mitcham. The applicant has applied for a new licence to allow the sale of alcohol for consumption off the premises from 6 in the morning until midnight, 7 days a week, and also for the provision of late night refreshment from 11 in the evening till midnight, again 7 days a week. The business intends to supply a range of goods and services, including alcohol for consumption off the premises. Alcohol sales are made or will be made from the supermarket sales floor if the licence is granted, and may also be supplied through home delivery. The application has been advertised as required by the Licensing Act, and in response to the advertisement, we received from responsible authorities some representations from both the police and from Trading Standards. The police have raised a representation concerning CCTV installation, the use of a security incident logbook. The applicant has agreed to include such conditions in their operating schedule, and these conditions, councillors, are shown in the agenda papers at about page 38, I think. The representation from Trading Standards concerning a Challenge 25 policy, the applicant has also agreed to this, and again that is shown on pages 39 to 40. There have been around 34 representations from other persons, predominantly local businesses, regarding crime and disorder, public nuisance and antisocial behaviour related to alcohol sales. Copies of these reps have been forwarded to the applicant and have been made available to this committee. The premises, as you are aware, is located within Mitcham Town Centre Cumulative Impact Zone. The authority considers that the number of off-sales premises licences in the Mitcham Town Centre, CIZ, is such that it is likely that granting further licences would be inconsistent with the authority's duty to the licensing objectives. The applicant, of course, may be able to demonstrate that through their operating schedule, they will have no negative impact on the cumulative impact of a large number of licensed premises in the same area. As usual, councillors, the subcommittee must take the following steps as they consider appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives, namely grant the application in full or in part, with or without conditions, or reject the whole or part of the application. Pages 4 to 5 of your report lay out conditions arising from the applicant's operating schedule, including those conditions I've already mentioned, which have been agreed with the police and trading standards. However, the committee must, having regard to the representations made, modify these conditions if it considers that such a step is appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. Councillors, I have no further matters to raise, but I'm happy to answer any questions if I can. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarity of that. Councillor, colleagues, do you have any questions you wish to ask of the licensing officer at this stage? No, thank you. No, okay, thank you very much indeed. The one thing I haven't done actually is to introduce everybody, but I suppose you can see everybody. But as you know, I'm Councillor David Simpson and I'm chairing the panel, and Councillor Nick Draper and Councillor John Dehaney are my colleagues this afternoon, and so we'll now proceed. And I'm going to invite the applicant to introduce their case, as it were.
Thank you, Chair. If I could just start by introducing who I've got with me from Tesco's. So my name's Chris Rees-Gay, and I'm the legal representative for Tesco's. And with me, I've got Hardis Purewell, who is Tesco's licensing manager, and also Subhash Subhaskaran, who is an operating manager for Tesco. So if I could just introduce those quickly before I start, Chair.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Lovely. So, Chair, in my presentation, I'll cover the following areas: a brief background for Tesco's, the application itself, the representations received, and then a brief summary. We seek the granting of the application as applied for, namely 0600 to midnight for the sale of alcohol and opening, and 2300 to midnight for late night refreshment. By way of background then, Tesco's are a national retailer that sells alcohol as part of a broad offering of goods and services. Tesco has over 3,400 stores with premises licenses, and there are over 2,000 or so Tesco Express stores, so the format of this application. Tesco have 300,000 members of staff who sell alcohol in store. They're all trained in the extensive licensing policies and due diligence processes. There are approximately 500 million alcohol sale transactions completed by Tesco's each year. And in terms of an individual store turnover, between 7 and 15% of sales are made up of alcohol. Tesco's were the very first supermarket and one of the very first operators to run its own British Institute of Innkeeping accredited training centres, with a recognised level of training being excellent. Touching specifically on training then for Tesco's, there are written training policies and formal training programmes in all stores that serve alcohol, which ensures that staff are equipped to meet and promote all 4 of the licensing objectives. Training is carried out with every individual member of staff when they're inducted. Refresher training then takes place at least twice a year, normally before Easter and Christmas, and whenever there are major changes to the Licensing Act. Training is undertaken by way of formal training package, which includes direct one-to-one training and also online via an interactive system, not just a tick box. In particular, and important to the representations made, Section 142 of the Licensing Act in relation to not serving to those who are drunk, as well as extensive training in underage sales, has taken place. This is also being reinforced with the agreed conditions with trading standards that you'll see set out on pages 4 and 5 of your pack, namely that Think 25 signage shall be displayed in a prominent position in the premises. A refusal system should be operated at the premises where alcohol is scanned through the checkout, and a prompt will alert the cashier asking for the cashier to think 25 and ask for ID if the customer looks under 25 years of age. All staff that undertake the sale and supply of alcohol shall receive appropriate refresher training in relation to the undertaking of appropriate age checks, as such, at least twice a year. And then in addition, Tesco's have their own policy in terms of management, that all staff are supported by the You Say No, We Say No policy, whereby if a junior member of staff refuses sale of alcohol, management on the premises will always support that refusal and also say no. Turning then to the express format, the subject of the application of this store. Express stores are designed to be convenience stores for local people in the surrounding area. Not only are the customers local, but so too will be the staff, with the majority of the 20 people being employed being from the surrounding area. The DPS and manager at present has not been chosen. However, Sebash, who is on the call and who I've introduced, will be the operations manager for this store. He has been in a Tesco managerial role for 14 years, and with Tesco's themselves for 21 years. He has held his personal license for 15 years, so is extremely experienced. He will oversee this store as well as another number of others within the area. He knows the area well himself in person, having lived there for 9 years and indeed managed a store up the road in Collier's Wood. In terms of community is part of the Tesco ethos, and this store will be an active member of the local community. Indeed, community relations is one of the 6 key performance indicators for each store, so real focus is put on this. For example, the bags of help are a key part of all Tesco stores, whereby money raised from carrier bag sales is used to fund local projects. For this specific store, obviously it's not open yet and none are in place, but for Mitcham and Morden, 40 groups have been given a total of £113,000 so far since the scheme's operated. For example, the Mitcham Town Community Trust and the 3rd Mitcham Scout Group for the replacement of their main hall floor. There's also the community board within the shop that informs the locals of what's going on in the area, and also not specific to this store, but also to all Tesco stores, there's the Community Food Connection. This is an award-winning scheme whereby since 2016, 38 million meals working with 7,000 charities and community groups have been provided. Again, specifically for Mitcham and Morden area, 11,700 meals have been donated thus far. Again, as the store is not yet open, the chosen allocated food banks have not been nominated. In terms of the application then, moving on, the hours applied for are 0600 to midnight. These are the standard hours for the express format. These hours are for shoppers' convenience, allowing shoppers to buy alcohol whenever the store is open. In our new 24-hour world where we now live, people do just want to pop in and buy a bottle of wine with their meal deal at any time of the day. And indeed, it's part of the Tesco overall offering, especially during these COVID times, so that customers don't have to make multiple journeys. You'll no doubt be aware of paragraph 10.15 of the current section 182 guidance that states shops, stores and supermarkets should normally be free to provide sales of alcohol for consumption off the premises at any time when the retail outlet is open for shopping, unless there are good reasons based on the licensing objectives for restricting these hours. This is also echoed in your statement of licensing policy at paragraph 17.1, which also states shops, stores and supermarkets will normally be permitted to provide sales for consumption off the premises at any time the retail outlet is open for shopping, unless there's good reasons based on the licensing objectives for restricting those hours. It goes on to say, e.g. police representations relating to crime and disorder and or representations relating to public nuisance. As you're aware, and as has been covered, the Metropolitan Police have agreed conditions. These conditions can be set out and found at pages 35 to 38 and do cover clarification in relation to CCTV and the incident report. And indeed, there are no representations from the HO in relation to public nuisance. We would say that this is a sign of confidence that police have in Tesco's ability to adhere to and promote the licensing objectives. Tesco's is aware that the premises is situated in Mitcham Town Centre CIA, and as stated, the police have agreed conditions, and they are the key authority when it comes to the special policy evidence in relation to crime and disorder and antisocial behaviour. The store itself is not a true off-licence, but a convenience store with only 7 to 15% of sales being alcohol related. The offered operating schedule and the agreed conditions mean that Tesco's would not add to the cumulative impact in this area. Moving then on to the representations. There are 24, I believe Mr. Brown stated 34, but it's 24 representations. And as stated, many of these are business representations, 15, I believe, with 7 others from interested parties. Instead of dealing with each representation individually, I will deal with the salient point raised within them. So starting with the 15 business representations from those in the business court, the representation initially highlights that there are other licensed premises in the area. As the committee will be aware, and as set out in paragraph 9.11 of the Statement of Licensing Policy, the matter of need, whether there is a need for another premises in a given area, is not a matter for consideration of the authority and will therefore not form part of the decision-making process. This is reiterated again in the section 182 guidance at paragraph 14.19, and that states need concerns the commercial demand for another pub or restaurant or hotel, or in this case, off license, is a matter for the planning authority and for the market. This is not a matter for the licensing authority in discharging its licensing function or for its statement of licensing policy. In relation to crime and antisocial behaviour, there is no evidence of this, and indeed you're aware that the police have agreed conditions and do not have concerns. In relation to the planning, the premises does have the benefit of a certificate of lawful use that confirms a change of activity to retail, and this was secured earlier this year. There are 2 planning applications have been submitted for a small extension to facilitate the back of house, with the determination of these applications taking place around mid-September. The committee will be aware, and as stated in paragraph 15.1 of your Statement of Licensing Policy, that planning, building control and licensing functions will be properly separated in order to avoid duplication and inefficiency. This again is reinforced in the section 182 guidance of paragraph 1464. And indeed, my client is aware that should they operate in breach of any planning permission granted, that they will be liable for prosecution under planning law. Attached to the business representation is a letter to the landlord. Again, we would say mainly dealing with planning concerns, but in that letter, it states that there will be a loss of social interaction. Indeed, quite the opposite, we would say, due to the community drive of Tesco's, but indeed, this is not a relevant licensing objective. Parking is also raised as a concern, and again, this is a matter for planning, but Tesco's would be allocated 15 parking spaces if the planning permission is granted. In terms of noise pollution, this has been raised as an issue into the night. Supermarkets are not normally known for their noise, but again, I can confirm that there's been no representation from environmental health, and there is no evidence to suggest that there would be noise. Again, it should be noted that, as set out in the representation, that the business court is closed and empty out of normal working hours. Therefore, no one would be affected at any rate in terms of those businesses in the hours that the businesses are not open within the business court. In terms of littering, Tesco's, as they do in all stores, will do a litter sweep every morning and will also have their own litter bin near the exit of the store. Again, it's firm policy that should a member of staff ever see a litter bin overflowing, that it will be emptied. Again, in terms of appearance of the store and signage, again, this is a matter for planning. In terms of there are a number of photos have been submitted, again, in relation to hidden areas. Again, there's no evidence that there will be issues created by these areas. And indeed, Tesco, should the planning permission be granted, there'll be a gated end to the 15 places. Therefore, Tesco's itself will be a sealed unit that only Tesco's will have responsibility for, so people won't be able to pass through to other businesses within the business court. But in addition to that, as agreed with the police, there will be full CCTV and the incident report log. As set out in the operating schedule, there will be a store manager present at all times. The store is open, and indeed, should there be any issues, and we say that there won't be, Tesco's will work with the local businesses and residents and responsible authorities should there be any issues. That was the business representations. Then turning to the interested parties. So Frances Healy, in her representation on page 85, raises concerns in relation to drunks. And as stated, Tesco's have very robust training policies and procedures in place, and all staff that sell alcohol are trained in section 142 of the Act, and that it's an offence to sell to a person who is drunk. Similarly, concern raised in relation to children and underage sale. Again, as mentioned previously, all staff are trained in underage sales and that they are aware that this is an offence, but again, there's no evidence that this will take place. Moving on then is the Mitcham Village Resident Association representation at pages 55 and 56. Again, they raise an issue in relation to children. The proximity to a young children's swimming pool will be an issue. Again, there's no link whatsoever or evidence to link this store to the proximity of the swimming pool, and as stated, it will be a closed off sealed unit with the gates at the back of the parking area. Mr. Singh submitted a representation at pages 151 to 153. Mr. Singh owns the Londis, and therefore this is clearly a business objection to this application, and that he is concerned about the potential impact a new premises license will have on his own existing business. And again, touching on the need and proliferation, as stated earlier, this is not relevant to the licensing committee today. Then turning on to Mr. Abraham Tharamanam's representation at page 154. Here a video was submitted that was 21 seconds long and a clip of a blue Volkswagen at night, having looked to have crashed into a wall with 2 police cars behind it. Again, there's no indication of exactly where this is, no indication how this would apply to the Tesco store, no indication it's stated of drink driving, no link whatsoever, we would say, with this Tesco store, and therefore should please be dismissed. As you're aware, though, each application should be taken on its merits, and this is stated in the section 182 guidance and paragraph 4.5 of your own statement of licensing policy, and that it should be specific to this Tesco store. There is no evidence to suggest that this store should it be granted a license, that it will lead to these issues, and indeed there are excellent training policies and procedures in place. There were 2 further representations on pages 155 and 175, but these have all been covered in the elements that I've raised. Yesterday, however, Chair, we received further evidence in, and again, it was 2 videos, I believe, from Miss Healy. Again, they showed a development of flats that would be near the car park, and indeed, we would say that these are planning issues rather than licensing issues. Public nuisance and light were mentioned, but I can confirm in terms of the side of the store that will look out onto the flats, those windows will be closed off and there'll be no light illuminating out onto the residential area, as it were. And indeed, obviously, Church Road is a very busy road, and there will be noise, obviously, from the traffic up and down that road. Chair, in terms of the committee will no doubt be aware of the Daniel Thwaites case, that the decision to be made as to whether to grant the application or not must be done on the evidence before them, of which we say that there is no evidence in relation to this specific store. And indeed, Chair, you'll be aware of the review powers that will be available to interested parties and indeed responsible authorities should there be a need. And again, it is Tesco's view that this will not be the case with the operating schedule and agreed conditions. Tesco's will not have any further effect on the cumulative impact. Chair, those are my submissions for the moment. I have a summary, but I will do that when the time is necessary.
Thank you very much indeed for that and for the clarity of your explanation to us this afternoon. Can you, the procedure now really is that ordinarily I'm so sorry about this. The responsible authorities would be questioning you, but at this moment in time, there weren't any representations because you already agreed with the responsible authorities various conditions that to be put on to this should this license be granted. So it falls for me now to invite those who seek to speak later who object to this application to in fact ask questions of you at this stage. So can I ask who would like to make the first question?
Councillor Simpson, my name's Natman. I'm very happy to kick that off if it assists you.
It does assist me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Could I ask the applicant, therefore, has he considered the letters from the police, in particular, the letters from between Lee Harrington and Rob Harrison and Pat Simcock?
No, I don't believe I've been made aware of those. They don't appear in the agenda pack.
Because it's pointed out, in fact, this is an email as recently as the 8th of August. It's in the possession of Merton planning authorities and also this committee's authorities paperwork. And it makes it very clear that this is already both a cumulative impact zone, which you pointed out yourself. And I think your closing point was essentially that there can be no further, to use your words, no further effect on impact. How can that possibly be correct?
Sorry, I don't know I can't really comment because I haven't seen the material that you're referring to, unless you can turn it.
Sorry,
to
Mr.
me in the
Natman, whereabouts is this letter that this email you refer to in the papers?
So I know it's been posted on the planning representation. I'm sure if its application, is it not 21P 2571?
No, it has to be in the papers that the committee's considering.
So this is the licensing hearing.
This is a licensing hearing, not planning hearing.
So there's a Pat Simcock's representation in the licensing hearing.
What page is it?
If you give me a moment, then perhaps if
no worries.
You could help me possibly if you've got an index to it.
I'm looking at the same time as you look.
Sorry, Mr. Natman, who are you speaking on behalf of? Could I just ask?
Yes, of course, Mr. Singh.
Mr. Singh, lovely, thank you. So Mr. Singh's representation's at page 151.
Yes, fine. Now, who is written already, and even if it isn't in the pack, it's certainly within everybody's knowledge that this is already designated as a high crime zone. Did you know that?
Sorry, no, it's not contained in the pack, and it's not contained in the statement of licensing policy. I'm aware of the CIA within the statement of licensing policy.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mr. Natman, maybe you're referring to the cumulative impact assessment rather than anything else.
So I'm referring to the cumulative impact assessment, and of course that document leads on to Merton's own stated CIZ policy, does it not? In which you've already identified that 20% of Merton is harmed by alcohol. Is that not right? At page paragraph 210 of that document.
I don't know which document you're talking on.
Merton's own published document as to its own cumulative impact zone assessment document, the licensing policy.
If you're seeking to rely on this, is this evidence that you put before the committee and myself? Because I haven't seen this, I'm afraid, so I can't comment. Okay, I would ask that it's not taken into account.
It is Merton's published licensing policy for the period 2020.
Mr. Natman, we're in danger of going round in circles. The point at issue, surely, is that you're making a representation on behalf of Mr. Singh.
Yes.
Only those matters which are listed with
you're speaking to the representation
for this afternoon can be considered.
Yes.
And we're not dealing with planning issues either. This is a licensing application.
Yes, and in which case, can I put it another way to the applicant? Has he seen Merton
planning is a totally separate matter.
Licensing policy, which is published specifically relating to alcohol licensing? You just said you can't comment on that. You haven't seen it?
Yes, no, I'm aware of that. Thank you. I have seen that.
You have. So it clearly says there as part of the CIZ analysis that alcohol is already causing significant harm in the cumulative impact zones.
So I'm not sure that the point that you'd like me to make.
Well, did you accept that's what it says? That Merton's
there is a CIA in place, and as I stated, Tesco's are aware of that. Yes.
Yeah, it's at page 10, paragraph 2.4 of Merton's licensing policy stated point, which is that 42,000 people within Merton are regarded as drinking already at harmful levels. That's over 20% of the population of Merton.
Sorry, Mr.
But,
Natman, where's that? 10?
Page 10, paragraph 2.4 of the published licensing policy, both online and within. Clearly, since it is the licensing.
Lovely. Yes, I've got it. Thank you.
You've got that now.
Yeah.
But that's the document you said you weren't previously aware of?
No, I'm aware of the
You are.
statement of licensing policy. I wasn't aware of the other document that you were referencing.
So that is, I mean, that's commendably. Merton doesn't have to produce a CIZ. It's not required of it under Section 182, but it has done so. And your closing point was that selling additional alcohol in a cumulative impact zone wasn't going to cause additional problems. Well, the very nature of cumulative surely means that cannot be true, doesn't it?
So that's correct. Obviously, as I stated, we are aware of the CIA. The police obviously are the responsible authority that put forward the evidence for the special policy within Merton Town Centre. We've liaised obviously with them in terms of the application. We've agreed conditions with them in terms of additional CCTV and the incident report, and they no longer have a representation in place. And they would be the authority that, should they believe there would be issues, wouldn't necessarily raise them. I therefore went on to state that with the agreed conditions with both the police trading standards and the proposed operating schedule, that we would not, Tesco's would not be adding to the cumulative impact in the area.
So you want to say that you won't be adding cumulatively to impact. Why is that? Because you won't sell any more alcohol, or because
that's because of our policies and procedures in place. So the training that the Tesco staff have undertaken and the operating measures that will are in place through the conditions that have been offered.
Thank you. Chair, I don't want to be monopolistic of the time. I mean, I might have other questions, but I appreciate you've got a large schedule. I don't want to be unnecessarily combative or dominate the meeting. So perhaps you might ask other people if they've got questions, and I can come back later.
Mr. Nyman, I'm perfectly happy for you to continue with your representation on behalf of Mr. Singh at this point.
Okay, I'm very grateful. Thank you. So the applicant then, you'll have noted significant scepticism as between the agreement between the applicant and the police, and that's widely felt amongst numerous objectors.
I've overstepped. I think I should be saying to you, Mr. Netman, I'm very happy for you to continue to question the gentleman from Tesco's.
Yes.
If you haven't any more questions at this stage, then I will ask other representatives who may wish to make to question the gentleman from Tesco's to put their questions now. If there aren't any further, yes, right. Francis Healy, can you unmute yourself? Thank you.
Thank you. And I hope you will consider this is a relevant question. I'm a local resident. Now, apparently, amongst the comments that came from the businesses, there was mention of crime and disorder. As a local resident, I am wondering where this perception comes from. For example, how often does or has, or have rather, those in coming to that decision, how often have they, for example, walked in the local churchyard? How often, on a weekly basis, might they have collected up bags, at least 4 bags, at least, of litter, most of which, I don't want to exaggerate, so let's say a very, very great deal of which is alcohol related? How often has he, as just yesterday evening, has he wandered in that area and seen the drug taking, seen the drug dealing, been really nearly knocked down as yesterday?
Could I object? Sorry to interrupt, Miss Healy. There's no mention of drugs within the representation on page 85, nor of sort of the evidence that's been spoken of here. I just wondered if it could be kept to the information that I've obviously previously seen, please.
Yes,
Okay.
I think, if I may say so, that we need to keep to the agenda, which is to deal with a licensing application. The suppositions around what people may find in various places is not a matter for this subcommittee. So I think your objection or your questions, and I think you're trying to put a question to Mr. Reed Carey.
Right. My question then would be,
And I think it.
Councillor, you're breaking up.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
No, you can. We can hear you now.
Right. So sorry. Right, Mr. Haley, can you put whatever question it is that you wish to make to the representative from Tesco's?
right.
In relation to this particular application.
Right. With reference to this particular application, two questions. One, where does the perception come from that there is no existing problem to which Tesco's could contribute with regard to alcohol sales? And following from that, why is it thought that even more sales of alcohol in the area will not contribute to an existing problem?
Thank you. Mr. Rees-Gay,
Ms. Healy, obviously I haven't been to the premises myself and therefore couldn't comment. Tesco's do submit their applications in places that they believe would benefit from a convenience store being there. In terms of why we believe we wouldn't add to the cumulative impact, it's back to the points that I stressed within my presentation and again with Mr. Knapman, that in terms of Tesco's as an operator, with the training and the policies that they have, with the conditions that are being offered and have been agreed with the police not believing that there will be any further issues, with that in mind, we believe that we won't add to the cumulative impact within the area.
Okay, I hear what you're saying.
Thank you very much. Do you have any other questions you would like to make of Mr. Rees-Gay?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you very much indeed for your contribution. Is there anyone else who's made any representations who wishes to speak at this point or question?
May I speak, please?
Yes, Major. Yes.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to know why why Tesco's considers it so important to actually apply for an alcohol license. It's clearly very high on their agenda before they've got all the other issues tidied up. Obviously, we know about the planning situation, the forthcoming planning application, but it seems alcohol is so high on its agenda. Can I ask what this is all about?
Hello, Ms. Morgan. This is standard practice for Tesco's when they go about opening a new store. Obviously, it's a premises license as a requirement. It's a convenience store. People obviously associate Tesco's with the ability to sell alcohol as part of that convenience offering. So people will go in and do a shop, and as I explained within my presentation, for example, someone may want to buy a meal deal that contains a bottle of wine, and at that stage collect a bottle of wine while they're there. So it is purely for the convenience of those members of the community that alcohol is on sale.
Right, I see. So you wouldn't be interested in opening a store without alcohol at all? It
wouldn't benefit our customers. Customers naturally associate Tesco's as being a premium retailer, and as part of that offering of goods and services, alcohol forms part of that. And in terms of the figures, it's between 7 and 15% of sales only that are alcohol related. It is that add-on whilst you're doing your nip-in shop, as it were, your convenience store shop.
Okay. I'm surprised that you haven't, or you say that your colleague that worked at Collier's Wood knows the area. Does he really know the area? Does he know the area like we do, those who actually live here? and see what goes on.
I can't speak for myself. I suppose, Sebastian, if you could please just confirm sort of how well you know the area, as it were, and your role as sort of ops manager.
Yes, hi. Yeah, can you hear me well there?
Yep.
Keep going.
Hello. Yes, hi. Yes, I did live for 9 years and I worked in Collier's Wood and South London area, which I know the area very well. I'm not aware of any of that issue that's causing. And even if it is does and social behavior.
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Suresh, we're getting a lot of interference from you. Can't hear you properly. There's a lot of background noise.
Okay, can you hear me now?
That's much better.
Yeah, I was on hands-free.
Coming through, so yes.
I did live in the area for 9 years, and I worked throughout my Tesco career in 20 years in South London, and we have many stores around Mitcham area. Collier's Wood, we still have stores in Mitcham and Tooting. So my operational activity involved in the area, so I do aware of all the issue that happens in Tesco and surrounding area. And I'm not aware of any major issue that we have around antisocial behavior. Even if we have a robust training in place for our staff and the managers. And also we have a group team. We have a security manager for the area for about 30. And we have a people manager, myself, area manager. We are experts there to advise and deal with the situation if there is.
Actually, we'd rather not be inviting the problem as it happens, because we are aware of the clientele. We're just not happy that that they're going to have access to alcohol between 6 a.m. and midnight, much longer than anyone else in the area. A drinking problem.
We're moving back into representation rather than question, I think, at this stage.
Well, I beg your pardon.
Not
Okay.
a problem. You'll get your opportunity to do that in a minute.
All right, thank you. I'd like to just ask another brief question then. I'm a little bit concerned that when we were addressing the categories about, the reasons for objecting to this application, there's one that says the protection of children from harm, which we obviously took on board because that is our, one of our biggest concerns. But actually, Tesco's only offering towards that particular concern is Think 25 as a notice to give to the people at the till. Well, actually, I'm not sure that is really sufficient. Yeah, I've got a big problem with children. Okay, you're questioning and you're thinking that perhaps that's not a question. But
I
think
it's a question, but I suspect Mr. Rees-Gay has a response to make to it.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Just in terms of that, so there's signage throughout the store saying you need to be over 18 to buy alcohol as a first start. You then obviously get to the till, and at that stage, because of the EPOS system, as soon as alcohol is scanned, a till prompt comes up, and the member of staff has to look that person in the eye, engage, and do a Think 25 within their head and determine whether it is. So that's sort of the second element. If there is then a refusal, a member of staff may be called over, and that senior member of management staff will reinforce that no sale of alcohol. And I would argue that this is the premium standard across retail. I don't want to be disparaging to other stores along the street, but I'm certain they won't have the resources, the training, and the till systems in place that Tesco's will to prevent underage sales.
Thank you indeed. Caroline, do you have any other questions? Not representations at this point, but questions.
No, thank you. No, please let someone else. I'm sure.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Natman, I think, is wanting a question.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Just because the matter arose as to hours, I believe it was the applicant's case that said the hours, which were 6 o'clock to 11 and midnight respectively, 7 days a week, were the standard. I think I've got the words right. The standard format for the standard hours for Express format, the Tesco's Express format. If there were particular situations where there were particular problems with the site, would it not be reasonable and their expectation to vary those hours, to reduce those hours?
Mr. Rees-Gray?
I'm not sure. So I'm being, is this mentioned in Mr. Singh's representation again, Mr. Natman, or is this just an ad hoc query?
An ad hoc query following up from the previous, I think the previous question, or part of the previous question, related to why the hours be so long.
Yeah, I'm in your hands as to whether you'd like me to fill this question. Obviously, it should arise out of Mr. Singh's representation. He mentions nothing in relation to hours that I can see in pages 151 and 153. But I suppose, Mr. Natman, yes, they are express store hours, and obviously for Tesco's as an operator, it's beneficial that all their stores do operate the same hours so that there aren't difficulties and issues when it comes to looking at delivery elements and the like. So they do tend to ask and request for the same standard hours across the board, as it were. Hardish, I'm not sure if there's anything further to add on that point.
Thank you. Mr. Natman, have you any more questions on behalf of Mr. Singh at this moment in time?
Not at this moment, sir. Sorry, I don't want to dominate the matter.
Right, thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a question at this stage?
Councillor Draper, I think.
Right,
Is
to Councillor Draper.
Chair, is our chair yet? It is our turn to ask questions. Yeah, I'd just like to ask the applicant. You've got on page 33 of the documentation a representation of from above, which includes the car park, and it looks like there's a gate on the end which closes. First of all, would I be right in supposing that once that is closed of an evening or whatever, the business park is hermetic and you can't actually get inside it? That's number one question.
Councillor Draper, I believe that to be the case. Hardish, could you just confirm that is the case?
Hi, good afternoon. Yes, so the gate will be closed most of the time, and I think it's only being opened when there's one delivery that's going into Boundary. There's one delivery. That's when that gate's going to be opened.
Presumably that's I don't want to monopolise this, but that's of an evening.
So I don't know when that delivery is happening, but the gate is being pushed back, so it's not going to be in the location where it is at the moment. It's being pushed back to the end of the parking spaces.
Yes, I see that. I see that.
Yes.
No, because the second question is obviously you've also got trading times outside, well, normal trading times when the rest of the business estate is open, and you've got the post office working out of that, for instance. How will that gate be controlled, given that is the entrance into the estate?
There's a second entrance, so that gate's going to that gate is going to be shut all of the time, apart from the one delivery, and the other entrance will be used because it's a kind of a semicircle.
I know I shouldn't do this, but I can see various objectors shaking their heads about on that point. I want to be absolutely sure that this entrance into Boundary Business Court is not the main entrance into Boundary Business Court, or at least will no longer be the main entrance into Boundary Business Court once the Tesco's is there, if it is there.
That's right.
Is that absolutely correct? Right.
Yes.
That's the end of my questions, Chair. Thank you very much.
Obviously, that's if planning permission is granted to that effect, as it were. That's correct, isn't it, Hardish?
Sorry, I was assuming.
Yes, it is. That's right.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you, she's benefit?
2 hands raised.
Right, so I'm looking at Vicky, the screen that says Vicky S.
Mute. Hello, yes, hello.
Would you like to speak?
Yes,
Question?
thank you. I'd like
you've unmuted? Thank you.
I'd like to thank the chair for allowing me to speak. My name is Vicky. I'm from Roberts Fresh, Unit 15 in Boundary Business Court. So obviously, I'd like to thank the members of the committee for allowing me to speak and allowing the opportunity to bring these objections to their notice. In addressing the 4 main objections...
Vicky, sorry to interrupt, just so that I know who I'm following, can you just confirm, is that Bhaskaran Mukhanatan that you're talking on behalf of?
Yeah, I mean, we're representing sort of Unit 15, so, you know, we're kind of working unit, Roberts Fresh.
Roberts
Fruit.
Fresh.
It's Unit 15. So I don't know who...
Lovely.
We didn't have you listed as a representation.
I would actually like to point out initially that 17 out of the Boundary Business Court members or tenants have objected to this proposal of the license. So that's most important for us to first digest. In addressing the 4 main objections that have been specified, I would like to begin by saying that if we consider that crime prevention and disorder is a key facet for our local community to maintain, in particular to keep the tenants of Boundary Business Court and their respective businesses safe, surely the sale of alcohol on these premises will have a detrimental impact within this locality. I suggest that Boundary Business Court is not a viable location for the sale of alcohol, and it would compromise the security / integrity of the community within. If one cares to walk around within the Boundary Business Court and forecourt areas, there are innumerable security weak spots which an intoxicated individual could use to commit crime and antisocial behavior.
Sorry, is this still questions we're on, or are we now moving on to...
If you just hear me out, Mr. Rees-Gray.
Can we just hold on? This is question time to the applicant. You will have an opportunity, once question time is finished, to make representations separately.
Okay.
So I'd be grateful if you have a question that you wish to ask.
Certainly. Yeah, I mean, then I would like
the representative from Tesco. Would you like?
Well, maybe then we can. I would like to do a brief sort of summary later on, then, or representation, if that's possible. Yes.
You will have an opportunity to summarise the difficulties your colleagues have. But once we have finished with question time to the representative from Tesco, that's what this section of the panel is. Thank you. Or the hearing this afternoon.
Thank you for clarifying that.
I'll come on and invite all of you to make your particular representations so that they can be answered by Mr. Rees-Gay. Is that all right?
That's okay. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very, very much. Is there anybody else that wishes to ask a question at this stage? Mr. Masood, can you unmute yourself, please?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Unit Masood, and I'm representing Unit 6 of Boundary Business Court, First Fresh Foods, on behalf of Mr. Samuel Ratnam. I have actually a question for the legal rep of the Tesco. Are they aware that there are 4 schools within the quarter kilometer of this proposed Tesco store, and which are the Dolphin Swim Academy, Benedict Academy, and Melrose School, and the Hasselmere Primary School? And in my point, or in my view, the sale of alcohol from 6 a.m. till 12 midnight is not a suitable thing for the whole area.
Right, you're not. That's an opinion. You're not asking a question.
No, this is actually a question, sir, because what my understanding was that there are 4 points for the license committee, which the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. So if there are 4 schools within the within the quarter kilometer radius of the proposed Tesco, which they have a plan to sell the alcohol from 6 a.m. till 12 midnight, how we can say that this is not going to harm or affect the children in the area, or especially the school going?
Okay, Mr. Masood. Thank you for that.
Chair, I think it's back to the response that I made to Miss Morgan in respect that Tesco's have and are a sort of leading light in respect of underage sales in terms of training and policies in place, refresher twice a year, within the store, the signage, and indeed the till prompts and the way that the staff are and have been trained mean that it would be extremely unlikely that any alcohol would be sold to anyone under the age of 18.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Knappman, I think you've still got a hand up. Did you want to ask a further question?
Thank you. I do. For the applicant, it is, of course, the case that the Section 182 guidance stresses the need for deterrence of crime. You've talked us through how you'll keep a record of recorded crime and a CCTV monitoring. Would you agree that those things are simply the recording of crime that's going to happen? Those aren't of themselves in any way addressing the deterrence, are they?
So, apologies, Mr. Knappman. Could you rephrase the question for me?
Yes. So the Section 182 guidance.
Yep.
The purpose of relative to crime, the statutory objective relative to crime is
crime
that crime
disorder.
Deterred. Yes, crime and disorder. Quite right. It needs to be deterred.
Yeah.
You've explained how crime will be recorded, written down, and training will happen, and so it'll be recorded in a book or an events log and a CCTV purpose. But you'd agree that doesn't really address the deterrence of crime, does it? It merely allows you to know how much extra crime there will be because it's going to be recorded.
I suppose our response to that is in terms of premises, licenses, and applications, that in what has been offered is indeed sort of, again, the premium in terms of CCTV, instant log. As you say, it is not a deterrent in itself, whereas one might argue that CCTV is, but those are the measures that a premises license holder would need in order to satisfy those of the police.
So you would agree, surely, that crime and alcohol, more alcohol means more crime?
No, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that at all. No, I don't think there's a link there.
You don't. So I mean, Merton's own policy recognises.
Mr. Knappman, is this a question from Mr. Singh or not? Or is it a question from you rather than the person you are seeking to represent? Can you just explain to me what the question is from Mr. Singh? Is that?
So first of all, I've been asked by Mr. Singh, but in the process of being asked to represent him, quite a lot of other residents have, as it were, chipped in. So I'm in a certain way.
You will have the opportunity to speak in a moment. I'm asking you, question?
So you were going to say, is this question for Mr. Singh? Yes, of course it is. I'm hired by Mr. Singh.
From Mr. Singh, yes.
Yeah. Well, everything I say today is on behalf of Mr. Singh. I'm a professional.
All right, or other people that you seek to represent.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Ardish, did you have anything further to add on that? So I've seen you come on screen.
Yeah, it was only to add that, it isn't about, it's almost gone too far, where where it's like the recording and everything. Where our staff are trained in, Chris mentioned the Think 25 training, but we also do lots of security training and and our training is it's called Eyes Wide Open, and it's encouraging our teams in store to look for shoplifters or look for crime as well that's kind of happening in the store, and take appropriate action. So we don't just rely on the CCTV. It's also about our teams being strong, the managers being strong in the store too.
Thank you very much indeed for that explanation. Is there anybody else who wishes to ask a question at this stage, or can we move on?
Can I ask a brief
Councillor
question?
Draper, did you want to ask another question?
A brief question,
You
please. Your blurb, your application, Mr. Rizke, says that there will at most times be a manager in store. I read that as saying there's not going to be one there all the time. But you have told us previously that actually there will be a store manager at all times. So can you tell me which it is, please?
Certainly, please just bear with me a second.
Can I answer that? So I guess in the application, we're just being very cautious, because if there is an emergency, you don't want to end up breaching anything. So if somebody has to leave for 15 minutes because there's an emergency while another manager is asked to kind of manage the store, that's what that's for. But generally, I think if we didn't have a manager in place, we would probably close the store until a manager came along. So absolutely, there will be, there's 3 what we call shift managers and 1 store manager. So there's 4 managers that will be responsible for the various shifts, as well as kind of 1 overall manager who will, run a shift if somebody's on holiday. But I guess that's just us being overcautious.
Thank you for that.
Ms. Morgan, just to clarify, you're correct. It does state a member of the management team will ordinarily be on the premises at all the time the store is open. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Right. I'm going to seek to move on, if I may. If there are no further questions to the applicant, I'm now going to ask for those who wish to make representations to speak. So, Francis Healy, do you wish to speak?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Please proceed.
Right. I'd like to express my concerns as a local resident with regard to this application. And any comments I make are notwithstanding the planning applications registered separately and relating to this property, and notwithstanding what I have heard this afternoon. I believe that the potential for crime and disorder is considerable, and that neither the design nor the location of Boundary Business Court is conducive to public safety or make it appropriate for the sale of alcohol. At times, Church Road, so first of all, with regard to public safety and the protection of children from harm, selling alcohol will increase the volume of traffic. At times, Church Road is extremely busy and carries heavy traffic. The increase in vehicles that would be emerging from the site, were the application to be granted, could pose a significant danger to other road users, not to mention pedestrians, particularly in the case of turning right. This part of Mitcham suffers from poor air quality, and this would be increased by the extra fumes being generated. As an adult, I object really strongly to my health being jeopardized and disregarded just to further the commercial interests of a large retail company wishing to sell alcohol. But whatever I feel about myself and other adults, it's absolutely nothing compared to how I feel about the extra risks to which children, many of them very young, would be subjected. We all know the hugely detrimental effect that pollution can have on children. And we also know our own responsibility to protect them from harm of any kind. Looking at the design of the site and the potential for crime and disorder, I'm sure that if you had, that anyone had, a really good working knowledge of Boundary Business Court and or the locality in which it is situated, and have been able to study the photos, which I'm sure you all did, you will have noted the many places where it would be possible to remain out of sight to drink. And because the two together often go together, to drink or to take drugs with impunity, I recognise that Tesco's is not going to sell drugs. With regard to public nuisance, the issue of alcohol abuse is one that's familiar to Mitcham Town Centre. And more locally to Boundary Business Court, there are already concerns relating to drink. These problems would be exacerbated by the granting of a licensing application. Permitting it would simply heighten the existing difficulties. Right. Surrounding Tesco's by a fence, even were that to be done, might be an inconvenience, but it's hardly a deterrent. The crime rate in the area is high, and people who are up to no good in any locality can be surprisingly creative in their efforts to circumvent barriers. But even if that didn't happen and they weren't able to get access into the court, I'm talking about after business hours, they only have to walk probably less than 5 minutes to set up very comfortably, as is already the case in the local churchyard in particular. And I, as a local resident, and I know many other people who would absolutely 100% agree, would not want that either. So with regard to concern for protection of children from harm, in my opinion, Think 25 is not a strong deterrent to underage drinking. And by the way, I've never envisaged that Tesco's would serve a drunken person with alcohol. But unless we've lived in a very protected environment, we all know how easily some young people and even younger children manage to thwart rules to get what they want, including drink. Apart from the obvious risks to health, their vulnerability to abuse and therefore of becoming victims of crime can be more easily exploited when under the influence of alcohol. And it worries me that by allowing Tesco to occupy this site, the potential for problems of this nature would be encouraged. And okay. Additionally, there's no effective security on site, which enhances its potential as a safe haven for those wishing to drink. And it's true there, I'm thinking of the business court. I'd love to be 100% convinced that at night time, those wanting to drink won't manage to get entrance, but never mind. Sandham House is part of a business court, it seems to me. And there's already more than adequate provision for the responsible sale of alcohol through many outlets in the vicinity, more than enough. And I recognise that that may be considered a totally invalid argument. But for those who have got to live with the results, I don't think it is. The existing provision comes without any of the attendant problems of this application and without placing a blight on the area generally. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Healy, for that. I'm going to ask Mr. Rees-Gay whether he wishes to ask any
No questions, thank you, Chair.
You don't. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. I'm moving on. Who would like to be the next person to make their representations this afternoon? Well, Mr. Knapman, would you like, if nobody else is volunteering right now, would you like to go?
Yes, can you hear me? Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted, you're fine.
I never quite know, I do apologise. So this application it is to increase the sale of alcohol in an existing cumulative impact zone. I must confess, in trying to prepare for today, I wasn't quite sure where the lines were drawn on the map. It wasn't entirely sure. And so I was going to say it was either going to be in an impact zone or alternatively going to create an extension of the impact zone. But we're clear that it is in the zone. And for that reason, I would ask the councillors to understand well that it's against their own stated policy when measuring this and talking it through, as I'm sure you will with Mr. Bishop. The word is need, and what possible need can there be for more alcohol in a zone where alcohol is already superabundant by your own measure.
Can I just step in? Obviously, I'm looking at Mr. Singh's representation, and there's no mention of the CIA within that. Obviously, we have covered it at length today, but I believe Mr. Natman is obviously going off script again. And could I please just ask that he sticks to Mr. Singh's script if he is the person that he's representing, please?
Maybe I can also step in just to assist everybody here. I think the important thing to remember about the cumulative impact assessment is that it arises from an old cumulative impact zone and policy related to the police trying to deal with problem street drinkers. It's not one that's necessarily to do with multiples and that sort of thing, but obviously if they have measures in place to address street drinkers and how they approach coming into a premises, in terms of age restriction and also managers and staff identifying them, then there is an argument, I suspect, somewhere to say that they're addressing that particular part of the policy. Again, it comes down to, it will be the case that the committee will have to consider what's been said by all parties in relation to the policy, the assessment, as it now is, as opposed to the other substantive arguments that have been put forward. But I thought I would say that to give you a little bit more of a steer in terms of what it's designed for.
That's
would you like me to continue?
Very helpful. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Bishop. I'd like you to continue in the vein that's just been suggested.
Thank you. Well, simply to not to labour that point then, but I would simply point out that your joint strategic needs document, which is the one I was thinking of, states that your own document states that 20% of Merton's population is drinking at harmful levels. I refer you to page 10, paragraph 2.4 of your own document, and that alcohol-related hospital admissions in Merton have increased by over 27% in relation to this problem. And a tendency towards assault-related ambulance call-outs is noted. That is your own licensing policy published document on your own website. And I'm sorry if it's felt that I shouldn't be able to refer to that in a way to constrain Mr. Singh's representations because of some procedural triumph over.
No, you're certainly allowed to refer to the policy and to the cumulative impact assessment. That's not a problem.
Thank you. Thank you. Was that from Mr. Bishop? So I couldn't quite tell.
It was.
Yeah.
It was indeed from Mr. Bishop.
Thank you. So I couldn't. I'm sorry. I'm trying to do this in a modern way, and I think it's convenient to obviously group the representations for Mr. Singh around the Section 4 licensing objectives, and I'll try to miss out those that he would have wanted made where they've already been made by other people. I appreciate the councillor's time is valuable. I'm actually a councillor myself elsewhere, so I appreciate your time is voluntarily given, and you have your ears bent from time to time by people very strongly, and you're being asked to make decisions which follow a set of guidance. It's not always easy. You've heard that there are significant current issues with the business commercial park already. Significant scepticism is obviously evident to you from the what I would call a bundle of papers in front of you, the application pack, and when you reflect on it and sit back and look at it, I think you should find that scepticism on behalf of the residents of Merton is really rather reasonable. I would encourage you to take a moment and find out what is being said as between PC, SimCog, and it's not enough just to say that this is all within the planning committee. They can deal with it, and then the planning committee can say, "Oh, crime is sort of wasn't that dealt with by the licensing committee."
Mr. Knappman, I'm going to stop you if I may. We are all aware that this is not a planning issue. I must ask you to keep to the agenda that we have today, which is to consider the application from Tesco's in relation to licensing. It is nothing to do with the planning application, which is totally separate, and we have no locus over planning whatsoever. The only locus we have is over the licensing, and that is why we're sitting this afternoon. So if you wouldn't mind keeping your remarks now purely to the representations on behalf of the people that you seek to represent and not prevaricate, that would be extremely helpful.
Thank you. So I'm trying to address section 4A of the relevant statutory objective on crime and disorder, and ask you to look behind what those who I represent feel is a surprisingly quick and easy agreement. Nobody at a statutory consultation level seems to have felt it necessary to look into this arrangement. It's well known from the papers in front of you that there have been significant travellers' problems at the site. The site itself has been significantly explained to you as a maze of dangerous. I was trying to use the word corridors, but you know what I mean. Alleys, I think, is the word I would use. Alleyways, and the Metropolitan Police's own consultation process, normally known as designing out crime, hasn't really borne any fruition here. Although they expressed the view that security of crime prevention should be paramount, it suggested to you that this really hasn't. What you have before you really cannot be said to properly engage with that process, when all that is being suggested is some CCTV to tell you what's happened, a book to write it down in, and someone to agree that the person was under 25. Can you really satisfy yourselves that that is adequate? That is my representations on crime. Representations on public safety. This is a curious application. I appreciate that this is an interaction with planning, but this is an existing business park layout. There is a cemetery nearby, a graveyard nearby.
Mr. Knappman, would you please refrain from referring to planning matters? We are here this afternoon to deal with a licensing application, and I would remind you that the responsible authorities have all come to an agreement with the applicant in terms of their original objections.
If you truly say they have come to an agreement already, then this is OTO's meeting, is it not?
I think what the councillor was trying to say, I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but I think you know, Mr. Knappman, that what he was trying to say is that there is no representation from a authority, and because they've agreed to various conditions that they think will address their concerns.
All right.
It still remains that your client or clients have concerns, and that's what you're addressing by going through the licensing objectives and those concerns they have.
Thank you, and I hope that helps. Indeed, going through the licensing objectives, specifically the statutory regime, and I'm now trying to explicitly address objective B, which is public safety, specifically in the context of licensing. This is. I absolutely assure you, Councillor, that this is nothing to do with the planning. I am addressing considerations, objective B, that you must address. That is your requirement today. I'm not off on some off on a frolic discussing planning applications. You are required to address public safety, and therefore I would ask you to apply your mind to the consideration of the surrounding business park layout, its myriad of alleyways, and its general unsatisfactory nature. It's clearly originally designed for business and light commerce. The introduction at this time of a retail park in the middle for many of the clients would seem entirely inappropriate, especially given the hours which are suggested. You'll recall that it was said earlier that the reason for the particular hours, you are at liberty to suggest licensing conditions. You haven't heard any reason better than 6 to midnight is the standard operating template for the express model. I'm asked to represent that the public safety issues include the lack of adequate layout, the lack of adequate footpaths. You've seen the videos in particular, which suggest that the parking would be about 45 inches away from people's windows. The human rights considerations of having to close your windows because you're unfortunate enough either to have blackout curtains for the headlights that face you, or in the alternative of the car backs in the exhaust pipe, which means your window would have to be shut. That's not an enviable proposition for anybody. I appreciate there's a planning application issue there, but there's also a prevention of public nuisance issue, which is one of the statutory objectives you're being asked to consider. So I think that neatly takes me on to the public nuisance issue. You'll be aware that there's a block of flats being built extremely close by, and you are asked to consider what impact that might have on those residents, whether it's reasonable. But bearing in mind this is an emerging situation, you might well conclude that you're not yet in a position to fully make your decision, it seems to me.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Can I just confirm, is Mr. Natman speaking on behalf of Mr. Singh, or is he speaking on behalf of others? Because Mr. Singh doesn't mention the new flats at all.
He appears to be representing Miss G, somebody called Bickle, and Mr. Singh.
Because obviously things like travellers have been mentioned and dangerous alleyways, and I'm struggling to find where this information is coming from.
This is the second. This is the second meeting, isn't it? Or the second effort at this.
I haven't been any. No.
So did you say no?
Not as far as I'm aware.
No, it was adjourned because papers hadn't been circulated.
There was a notice requirement that we were concerned that, well, the committee was concerned about, and it thought, well, actually, it might be sensible to make sure that there's no issue with noticing. To make sure everybody has the opportunity to come to the committee and speak. So it was a precautionary measure to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to get their points across and have a full hearing. So yeah, I mean, that was just, as I say, an adjournment procedural step. You're now in the process of, obviously, the substantive hearing.
I think, Councillor Simpson, that might well be why there was an adjournment, and I'm not entirely sure which papers are before you at this hearing, which at the last one. I take no particular issue.
There's no difference. They're the same papers.
Thank you. I was trying to work that out. I thought the pageant 3 pages different, but I'm not. I would ask you to have a good look at section 110 of your published policy on nuisance, which is a policy regarding the need to ensure that local residents are not unreasonably disturbed. These hours surely will mean that deliveries are in the small hours of the night, when lorry deliveries will be in the small hours of the night. It seems that the effect of the licensing of alcohol, which is all tied up with the extraordinarily long length of these hours, if the hours weren't needed so much, perhaps the objections wouldn't be there, but they are, and so the objections are.
Would you propose in those circumstances that a condition should be added related to, sorry, if a license was granted, of course, that a condition should be added to address when deliveries happen, perhaps? Is that what you're suggesting?
I have no specific instructions. I am suggesting that. I think that is sensible, and I think that I would encourage you to discuss that constructively amongst yourselves. I do. I have no specific instructions as to what to propose, and I'm sure councillors are very well placed to, experienced at coming up with those suggestions, and with their legal advisors able to make those suggestions. Sure. Yes, I do think that's a genuine point under section 110 that you should. Okay.
Chair, could I just ask where does Mr. Singh talk in relation to an issue with deliveries? Again, I'm lost again. It seems Mr. Natman's just going off his own wish list currently.
I would point to the publicly available documents from the police about the security. I'm particularly looking at PC Harrison's very recent email. I think it's the 6th. If you give me a moment, I'll tell you.
Is it in the agenda pack at all, please, Mr. Knappman?
I'm not aware it's in the agenda pack. I'm simply making.
I therefore haven't seen it, and it can't be therefore relied on.
Yeah, you see, Mr. Knappman, the process of a licensing hearing is always that to provide fairness in it. Is what we're trying to always do is make sure that anybody who's an applicant or anybody who's a party has all the paperwork that they need to see, and has the ability therefore to respond to it. Otherwise it becomes unfair to that party that doesn't know it or hasn't seen it.
More than understand a few aspects of this. It's just that, as I say, I'm trying to be fair about
Sure.
I'm asking councillors to stand back and take a common sense, realistic approach to the situation. You're hearing from a really large number of local residents as to and businesses as to their genuine concerns about the situation.
I think what you're trying to get to there, and I think Mr. Rees-Gayes will be well aware of it, is, and especially as Mr. Rees-Gayes mentioned the case, Thwaites does allow the councillors to have some knowledge, not too much, but some knowledge of the area around, a little bit, not too much. And of course they do. I do know that they probably had the opportunity to have a look around the area just to formulate their views of it. But one can't go too far with that one, I think is the best way of putting it, Mr.
I agree with you. I mean, what judges can take judicial notice of and not take judicial notice of, I think we all of us argue about that.
But it's actually specific case law.
I have Thwaites in mind. Thank you.
I think it was also the Conservative Association up north somewhere. I can't remember the particular case. Or I can't pronounce the name actually.
No, that's fair enough.
I won't even try.
The combination of the Conservatives in Yorkshire is beyond my brain as well. So
no worries. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that as it were, I think I was largely finishing up. I mean, in terms of my representations, I was very struck by the obvious point that Mrs. Morga made regarding the telling nature of the application. I accept Mr. Rees-Gayes says that it's their standard practice to put the application for the license for alcohol in first, and then the planning applications follow. But in terms of Thwaites, do weigh up then, councillors, what that means in terms of just how important is the volume of alcohol to be said. And I return to the closing remarks of Mr. Rees-Gayes at the end of his initial representations, when he said that in this cumulative impact assessment area, to use his exact words, that it would have no further effect on cumulative impact. Well, that has to be a false statement. It can't be anything else. The idea that this isn't going to add to cumulative impact of alcohol sales, unless Tesco's is a complete failure in its commercial objectives, and nobody would ever, of course, suggest that, then this has to be outside of your policy. There is no need for this alcohol to be sold in this area. In the event that that isn't what you decide to do, I would ask you to have a very hard look at the hours in which the alcohol can be sold. And the reason I say that is because there was no good reason given for why it needed to be from 6 to 11 or midnight. And the only reason I heard given was that that is the standard express template. That surely can't be a good reason when weighed up against all the other representations you've heard with regard to the statutory objectives. You'll be maybe pleased to know I think I've finished.
I was going to invite you to just address that last point, perhaps, Mr. Knappman, in relation to the hours in a little bit more, maybe summing it up. Is that the right way of putting it?
Yes.
Because you're making the point, but you're not explaining your reasons for it.
My reasons are you've heard representations relative to the statutory objective, that there are 4 children's academies and the Dolphin Swimming Academy in close proximity. They all have for them it's all very important that
I'm going to take you off that one, but because obviously the whole point, and Mr. Rees-Gayes has mentioned this a number of times now, The whole point is that what they're saying is the till prompt, the signage, the CCTV, all of those, and also obviously the person or staff looking at the person and working out if they're over 25 before they work out, ask for ID. That all of those things are things that will stop them selling to children. That's the argument that they're making. I'm hoping in terms of hours you can take it away from that.
In terms of hours, thank you. Yes, indeed. In terms of hours, I could also take it to the point that the various business operatives, the business tenants in the business park also make, is that the nature of their business park is that the park is designed for operation in normal daylight hours, in normal business hours. It wasn't designed for late night operation in the way that this would affect. The suggestion that somehow the gating and the fencing will be rearranged and that'll somehow sort it out is clearly not accepted or accepted by the other tenants who remain dissatisfied with that, or indeed the residents who feel that fencing may be a deterrent, I think we heard, but isn't an effective reason to stop that. So in terms of the alcohol hours, and I think Mr. Rees-Gay's expression was that a meal deal is their consumers expect to buy a bottle of wine with their meal deal. Well, is it really reasonable to expect does a meal deal need to be purchased at 11 midnight relative to all the considerations that's weighing up?
I think Councillor Drayton was trying to say something, but he's muted.
I was just, with all due respect, these are points that have, first of all, already been made at some fairly considerable length, and second, I don't see the immediate relevance, and I don't really want a response to this to the case in point. I really think it would be kind of Mr. Knapman to actually give some of the other complainants a chance to put their viewpoints forward as well.
In which case, for the second time, I think I'll say I finished.
Thank you, Mr. Knapman, and thank you, Councillor Draper. Now, I'm much obliged to both of you. I think it would be Vicky.
Chair, sorry, I understand that I have a chance to raise questions.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
I don't have questions. I suppose it's just coming back on that street drinker point that Mr. Bishop raised. Obviously, I can confirm that in relation to street drinkers, Tesco's would work with the community and the responsible authorities should there be any issues with street drinkers. Obviously, Mr. Bishop raised that, and I just wanted to clarify that point.
Mr. Rees-Gay, thank you very much. Vicky, would you like to come in?
Yes, please, if I may. Thank you for giving me the opportunity again to raise some of these objections. I'd just like to reiterate what Mr. Knapman was saying, that all of the points that I will be raising are in context with the licensing. They're not to do with the planning. So in addressing the main 4 objections that have been specified, I would actually first of all also like to point out that I'm from Unit 15, and out of the 23 units that are in Boundary Business Court, 17 have objected to this licensing proposal. So that's there for everyone to consider. So in addressing the 4 main objections that have been specified, I would like to begin by saying that if we consider that crime prevention and disorder is a key facet for our local community to maintain, in particular to keep the tenants of Boundary Business Court and their respective businesses safe, surely the sale of alcohol in these premises will have a detrimental impact within this locality. I suggest that Boundary Business Court is not a viable location for the sale of alcohol, and it would compromise the security and integrity of the community within. If one cares to walk around within the Boundary Business Court and forecourt areas, there are innumerable security weak spots, which have been already mentioned, which an intoxicated individual could use to commit crime and antisocial behaviour. Though Tesco have stated that they are willing to erect a security fence as part of the proposal to isolate their premises. This will merely function as just that, a fence to protect their interests and not that of the wider business court community, since there are multiple entrances and exit points dotted around the complex. It has been mentioned that there could be the addition of a bona fide security inspector to safeguard tenants. However, this would not only prove prohibitive from a cost perspective, it would also be practically unworkable due to the previous mentioned security weak spots, of which there are many. Further to this, since many businesses require late access to their facilities at the Boundary Business Court, it would mean that any individual with the intention of committing crime or any nefarious activity could gain unwarranted access to come and go as they please from various access points, be they gates, walls, etc. I need only refer recently to the episode of gypsy travellers who were only recently evicted from the premises after they had gained access to the location. And then if one looks at crime statistics for Mitcham up until June of this year, most of the crime committed is due to antisocial behaviour, and that is undoubtedly fueled by alcohol consumption. And
sorry to interrupt, can I ask where these figures have been taken from? From again, I'm looking at Robert's fresh representation and there are no figures within that.
I mean, these are in the public domain. I'm sure you could download any of these statistics.
I do understand that. But
if they're not in the papers today, we can't, they're not part of this discussion.
Okay, all right, that, I understand that. But I think we can understand that most of the crime that's committed is due to antisocial behaviour, and usually that's fueled by alcohol, which is related again to the licensing proposal. I would also like to say that granting of such a license for Tesco will no doubt exacerbate crime further within the locality, because it will create a situation of drinking in public places within the business court locality. Bearing in mind that such activities usually occur in large groups, this will have the effect of intimidating both tenants of the Boundary Business Court and members of the local community. It will deter tenants and residents from using community walkways and spaces, areas which they would otherwise use without impediment. Related to the last point, Boundary Business Court also presently serves children within the local community who use the Dolphin Swimming School Academy to learn safety within an aquatic environment. No doubt the sale of alcohol on these premises and its associated issues will not only deter parents and children from using such a facility, it will dull an already limited access to recreational activities. The close proximity of two local schools, I think it's Hazelmere Primary. And
Chair, sorry to interrupt. This detail is not contained within the representation in terms of schools, and it's all, we've all heard this before. And again, I've mentioned 3 times the same processes that are in place for age verification and the sale of alcohol related to this premises license application.
Certainly. I mean, I think I would suggest one thing, Mr. Riske, that you need to actually physically go to Boundary Business Court to see the issue of security and weak spots, to understand that. And that's why I'm raising these issues basically in this meeting. So obviously, in terms of the schools being quite close proximity as well, if the application is granted, it will also impact locally and have further implications for the local community. The correlation of alcohol consumption and antisocial behaviour would further stretch the resources of the local police, who are already subject to reduced budgets and manpower.
Again, Chair, there's no, this is not written in the representation. There's no evidence of this. Sorry.
Okay, I mean, that's your right to say that.
But I think, Vicky, you've got to understand, and it's difficult, I know, that you can only address the issues that are raised within the papers that everybody has been circulated with for this afternoon's hearing. Anything else outside of that, which may reflect opinion, it may reflect other activity, is
that wasn't me. I didn't do that. I didn't pull the plug on the chairman.
Sorry, we'll have to wait for him to come back in.
Yeah, I think we will.
Apologies, everybody.
That's okay.
I think he's been suffering internet issues occasionally. I think it's fair to say that that the point has been addressed.
Okay.
Let's wait for him to come back in. Amy, if
Certainly.
you can make arrangements.
Just working on it. Just give us a few moments.
Is it appropriate, Guy, to ask Vicky some points of clarification with regard to the business court case, while the business court, while the chair is not here?
I think it would be preferable for you to hold fire.
Then I shall do just that.
Until he comes back in, so that he can hear that as well. I think that's only fair to him as well as everybody in the
Totally
meeting.
in agreement. I was just thinking.
Apologies to everybody that there are occasional issues with IT. These things do happen, unfortunately.
Amy. No.
Apologies. He'll be with us in a couple of moments. Okay, I can confirm the chair is back with us now. He's dialed in on the phone, so he's got no picture, but he is here on the phone and he can hear.
Good.
So, Councillor Simpson, do you want to proceed with the next person to speak?
You'll have to unmute, John.
*6. Or is it #6? I wonder, Councillor Draper, with you, whether you will want to take over management for the time being.
I maybe if you feel that's appropriate.
Well,
Would it be appropriate from the chair to actually ask that question of Vicky? Sorry to call you Vicky. I'm not. You know. It was purely an information. I've read from the internet that Boundary Business Court is an established industrial location within a gated estate benefiting from CCTV. As an established business within it, would you say that's true or untrue?
It's true, but it's not prohibitive of stopping people from coming in to the community and from doing as they please. The problem really exists here that if you introduce a alcohol license, it will create a situation of people coming in and just using the place for alcohol consumption.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but that wasn't really the question. I was questioning: is this a correct statement or an incorrect statement? It is
that there's CCTV there in existence. Yes.
I mean, obviously, Mr. Rees-Gay would be concerned if, for instance, that CCTV didn't prove to be working, if the gating didn't prove to be effective, because I'm assuming that I don't want to put words into your mouth, sir, that you've based your business plan on those premises.
Indeed, of course. Security. I mean, security is the prime concern, and the idea that if you grant this license, the sale of alcohol will exacerbate the situation and could compromise the security issue.
That I appreciate what you're saying. I just wanted to clarify that particular point. So, Vicky, obviously you got cut off because David was. Was there anything more that you needed to say at this stage?
Yeah, just one other thing. The other thing is that there is no bona fide security person there who operates presently. So that itself entails that opening a business, as long as Tesco will be, will make it even harder to monitor crime, with the exception of, as you say, CCTV being there. I don't think CCTV in itself is a deterrent, if I'm perfectly honest.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Rees-Gay, did you want to come back to ask Vicky any questions?
No questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, who's the next person who wants to make a representation? It's a toss-up between the two of you. Carol, would you go first then? You will be next, I promise, Janae.
Okay. Okay. Well, a lot's already. Am I here? I am. A lot's already been said, and my original script actually, a lot of the points have already been covered. But you've probably all got the impression that we're a bunch of NIMBYs. But that's not so. We are just genuinely concerned for our neighbourhood and the children, and we're also very concerned. We have the chair again now, do we? With the Boundary Business Estate, Vicky has talked about the masses of hideaways, the little nooks and crannies. I've seen it for myself. I've been around there. I have seen numerous cans, drug. Okay, we don't put drug, but there's drug paraphernalia there. It's all there. And whilst we know that Tesco's, and this is a planning issue, so we're not supposed to talk about it, but we do know that they're going to put a fence around with a motorised gate. And, you know, it all sounds very posh and lovely, and they're going to be enclosed. But actually, there are so many other little areas where you can hop in. And I can tell you, some of the lads and people we see around here, they'll have no compunction. They'll be jumping over that fence. CCTV won't stop them. And, you know, they'll just have fun. We know that gangs have been on the estate. We know that there have been incidents. A young lady was attacked seriously, still ongoing issues with that. What hope
Sorry,
do
Ms.
we
Morgan,
stand
where exactly does it say that? Apologies. I'm looking at the
What's
Mitcham
that?
Residents Association about a lady getting attacked.
I think I referred to, I didn't refer to anyone particular being attacked. To be honest, I thought she was going to be speaking today, but obviously something has happened that she's not speaking. But suffice to say, a 12-year-old child was attacked in the business estate. CCTV didn't stop them. They just carried on. Very difficult. So, you know, clearly we're very upset. We really, really are upset. We further issue. We don't actually know what a refreshments license refers to either. Sorry, I haven't asked that in my letter. But
I'll answer that for you. Gives me something to do. So it's always important. The late night refreshment is a hangover from old law before 2003, 2005, related to hot food and drink after 11 p.m. until 5 in the morning. They want to provide hot food and drink between 11 and midnight. So that's why they have to ask for that permission to do that. It's an extra to the alcohol side of things. So that's just
it's a formality. It's a formality. It's not a question of opening up.
It's a licensable activity, so it is a formality in that sense, and that's what this application is to deal with alcohol, which is one licensable activity, and late night refreshment, which is another type of licensable activity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, may I interrupt, Carol? Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Regards to Mr. Risque's question as to who you're referring to is actually my 12-year-old daughter. And obviously once you have, I am here. Yes, I am.
Should we do that when you're
that's all I wanted to say. I will obviously address that.
Councillor Draper step back in, I think.
I think that would be a very good idea. I
just wanted to note that Mr. Christopher should know that it is my daughter. It wasn't just like a random, it was represented from my perspective.
And we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't realise you were here, Kim. You hadn't come up on my gallery. So there we go. Anyway, the fact is, you know, we're unhappy. We're definitely unhappy. We need to protect our young people. Licenses for this length of time, not a good idea. We've got so many very, very suitable outlets locally. We've got masses of larger supermarkets. And we just sort of get the sneaky feeling that perhaps Tesco's haven't looked at these figures, crime figures, which are published and, you know, readily available. They must know about them. Sorry, I've just missed the other point I was going to make. I don't know. Anyway, the fact is, you know, we're clearly unhappy. We're very unhappy. I think I'm going to leave it at there because so much has been said already.
Thank you very much, Carol. Now, I did promise Junaid Masood to go next, but would you give your place to sorry, I don't know your name. Is it Kim? Or just purely from the point of following on one to the other? Is that all right, Junaid, or would you rather speak first? Just for the sake of continuity. Can I hear from Kim first then?
Okay, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I'm a local mum that lives down Fitzbridge Road, which is just a stone throw from Business Boundary Court. And Carol was actually referring to my 12-year-old daughter that was approached on 2 separate occasions just this year in May. My daughter is
Kim,
now.
I'm terribly sorry to interrupt. Are you referring to a specific representation here? Because
My
obviously I've not
You
been
should have
made,
representation. You
made
should
aware
see,
of this.
You should
at
see
all in this
reputation
specific
from
instance.
myself.
Could you
I
just point to me in
highlighted.
the pack where it is? Is that all right? Sorry to be difficult. I just want to know what I'm referring to.
Can I interject at this point? I think, you know, because this, I do appreciate, Mr. Rees, that it's not specific to this, but it may not be specific.
Okay.
But I think
More than happy with that, Chair.
I think it might well be useful for us in making our decisions. Kim, do carry on.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So obviously, as I was explaining, my daughter was followed by a gentleman at just 12 years old. Now, the police were informed on this occasion, and they have done absolutely nothing with regards to this. Now, on a second occasion, my daughter was approached on a 200 bus, which goes through round near business. You can access it across the road from Business Boundary Court. She was approached by this gentleman who spoke absolutely vile stuff to her. Again, she's 12 years old. She doesn't need to be approached by any man. This has taken a significant effect on her mental health. She's seeking counselling on a weekly basis. So now I understand, you know, with the alcohol, one of these gentlemen were intoxicated at the time, but because of the sound, of the CCTV, they can't convict because they couldn't have there wasn't any audio. So it was basically brushed under the rug. Now, I know you say about, sorry to interrupt, but I know you say about you're willing to do CCTV and log crime in the area. CCTV hasn't made a difference to Fitzbridge as it is. The police can't control 9 times out of 10 what happens on Fitzbridge. Now, as a local resident, I've lived here for 9 years, and I come in close contact with multiple of this because I live near the tram stop. So I see most of the crime anyway. They can't control it. If they can't control a 12-year-old being followed and approached, what can you then provide by bringing a Tesco's to help prevent the protection of children? And I know that it's been highlighted with regards to all of the hidden locations in Boundary Business Court. I personally have been there. I've personally taken pictures, and there is no way to stop that from happening, regardless to whether you put gates there. What's to stop them from using the other gate? That's going to be open. You can't keep that locked because of the businesses. If travellers can get in now, how are you going to prevent this from further happening? Now, my daughter was approached on Business Boundary Court by a gang of boys, and your CCTV didn't work at the time. So how are your CCTV going to prevent this from happening in the near future? Now, bearing in mind, this was only May this year that my daughter was approached.
Kim, I'm very grateful you said that, and I also grateful to Mr. Eastgate for his patience in allowing to be said. The 200 bus, I'm afraid, I don't think Tesco's can take anything from that. But that your daughter was she wandered on to the business court, which is
she was actually chased by a group of boys for her.
She was actually on the business court.
She was actually on the business court. She was going to Royal Mail.
She's working for Royal Mail.
No. She's only 13 now. No, she was going to Royal Mail to pick a parcel up, and she was approached by a group of boys. They had balaclavas up, so you couldn't see them. And my daughter's not one of them type children that are very sociable. She's very quiet. She doesn't, go out. Obviously now she won't go out because of it. So I object to the Tesco's going here, it's more for protection of children and safety.
I think you've made an interesting point. Very, very much indeed for you. Right. Is that somebody else trying to talk? No. Carol, you haven't got your mute on. It may be coming from yourself. All right. Mr. I know that it wasn't specific to it wasn't in the notes, but is there anything you can respond to on that?
Chair, unfortunately not. No, I would, although it's an awful situation, and I would just ask that obviously it not be considered here at the hearing today due to the situation of we are here in front of the licensing committee to look at the papers involved, unfortunately.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay.
Right, I'm back.
Aye,
Sorry, I've been listening all the way through, but
do you want to take over again?
My technology has let me down. I'm now back in.
Right. Okay. Would you like to take over again then? Very, very grateful. Thank you very much for your patience, everybody else.
Thank you, Nick, for Councillor Draver for stepping in. I'm terribly sorry about this. Who else is wishing to speak? Mr. Masood, would you like to unmute yourself?
Hi to everyone again. As I told earlier, I am representing Mr. Samuel Ratnam from Unit 6 of the Boundary Business Court. As some of the fellow participants of this, meeting already discussed and raised some issues, I just want to ask the respected committee members just one question. Has anyone of you from this committee ever visited the business court physically by themselves? And are you familiar with the proposed the Tesco store and the parking days? Have you? No. Okay. Thank you. Actually, there are 4 points which we can discuss under the licensing application, and I'm actually going to merge all 4 of these. So I'll take a very, a short period of time. I believe that this is in the best interest of the wider community of this area and the businesses, the local businesses, to object to this proposal for granting the license. The addition of a Tesco in this location will cause serious damage to the location and must be rejected. And if accepted, the store will run from 6 AM to 12 midnight with an alcohol license, which is completely unsatisfactory. The sale of alcohol in this area would be counter-initiative to safeguarding strategy. Alcohol is a well-known intoxicating, impairing judgment and decision-making respecters attributing to the antisocial behavior. There are almost 1.2 million violent incidents last year because of the alcohol abuse, which is already available in the public domain on NHS. I believe that that the trade of alcohol in this area serves as a major risk to the safety and livelihood of the community. The general area of Cricket Green is residential housing, and there would be an unsuitable significant crime risk in addition to the already crime rate of the area, which is above 90%. The 90% ratio which I'm referring is actually the response submitted from the Metropolitan Police in the planning permission. So I'm just taking that part from that side. I got the actually paper with me, but this is with the planning application. So I don't know if the
Chair, just the normal there, please.
familiar.
Obviously, this is not planning.
Yes. But I actually took that 90.545% of the crime from that police report. The resident would suffer the most, as those seeking to immediately consume would look no further than the immediate area. In this case, Boundary Business Court is already with the nearby development of 96 Church Road, which are almost 21 residential flats. The risk of drunk drivers on the main road and the nearby area is also a considerable key factor.
Sorry, can I interrupt again? I don't believe there's anything in the representation that mentions drink driving.
I think
in the Unit 6 representation.
I think what we discussed over here in this meeting and what the questions have been raised and there were the replies. Not everything was, I think, in the representation. We actually, anything which relates to these 4 points can be discussed in the representation, what I believe. If I'm wrong, then please correct me. Because
well, my view is that you can speak and expand on what's actually in the representation, but drink driving doesn't appear in your representation for Unit 6 at all.
Okay, I understand. The business court also happens to have many secluded areas in where there is the risk of criminal behavior, as there would be out of the regular line of sight and able to do as they please. The other point that there are also lies the issue of public disturbance. If the Tesco is to be trading alcohol during the evening until late night, there are no reasons as to why the consumer would not pester the other businesses while it's in this area. The businesses of this community cannot contend with their employees and businesses being harassed. The business code simply cannot have intoxicated individuals freely roaming in this area as they wish. The proposed parking bays lie just 45 to 50 inches from the construction of a new homes at Sandham House. Again, this is a matter which is belong to the planning, but I'm just going to tell you that this also belongs to public nuisance as well, because if the parking base of the proposed Tesco is just 45 inches away from the residential unit, where you can assume that in the future the family and the children will live. How this is going to be affect? I think this is, you can connect the dots between these two as well. The proposed, as I said, that they are 45 to 50 inches away from the new home. If an individual wish to drink after the purchase, they would start in the car park and end up disturbing the residents. There has also been discussion of secure gates. However, its hour would be unsuitable as many businesses require access at any time. Case in point, Royal Mail, an extremely active company requiring 24 accesses. There are other businesses over there which require a very late night access or the earlier access. A significant issue also lies with the emergency services access. The addition of a gate would restrict access to large vehicles, God forbidden, in case of any emergency or any disaster, like fire engines or other ambulance or other services which normally use the big vehicles, the large vehicles. There are also multiple entries and exit points within the business code, causing a singular gate to be inefficient.
Is this again planning, please?
But when it comes to the prevention of crime, the public safety, the public nonsense, the children, causing the children
I think it's
from
very
harm,
important.
it's all well connected. It's connected to one another. I totally agree what you are trying to say. That is, for the planning one. But some of the points also, cover these 4 points under the licensing committee as well. And the last thing, as we know that the public safety is also of paramount importance, especially when concerning children. The scale of alcohol, the longer business hours between 6 a.m. to 12 midnight is a very serious issue in my point of view. The sale of alcohol in proximity to almost 4 schools is unacceptable. These all 4 schools are under the proximity of a quarter of a mile. As I mentioned earlier, these are the Dolphin Swim Academy, Benedict Academy, Melrose School, and the Hasselmer Friends. And in the whole area, I don't think so there is any other business which is going to serve alcohol from 6 a.m. in the morning till 12 midnight. And the safety and well-being of these children are at risk. They would all be exposed to potentially inebriated individuals in public spaces as they have traveled to and from their respective educators. And to conclude, I would like to summarize that the allowance of an alcohol license is not safe for the community well-being, and request that you should, before granting it, consider it, very carefully. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Masood. Now then, is anybody else wish to make any observations at this stage? Because we're moving towards concluding this. So I want to, in particular, then ask if there are no further questions at this stage. I want to ask now the licensing officer for any comments or clarifications that he may have. I think we had most of those this morning. Go on.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've nothing further to add, really.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Can I ask the legal advisor for any comments or clarifications he may wish to make at this stage?
I'll try and be as quick. So yes, we've already gone through these things repeatedly, but planning is not in your gift here. That will be another chance for those perhaps objecting to us to raise those planning issues, not in licensing. Again, we've talked about that, not relevant to your decision making here. just because there's other premises nearby does not fall into your consideration. Air quality is under a different legislation, not under the Licensing Act. I'm sorry, Mrs. Healy. Unfortunately, it's not for this committee to consider, but nevertheless, it is for other authorities to monitor and deal with that sort of thing. Traffic planning, again, it comes into planning in terms of the parking and drink drivers that may be driving past. So yeah, that's it. I hope that helps. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bishop. Now I'm going to ask if any of the interested parties, that is those who've made representations this afternoon, if any of you would wish to make a very, very brief closing statement. If you don't wish to, Mr. Singh. Mr. Singh, would you like to speak?
I think he's muted.
No, we can hear him.
We can hear you, Mr. Singh, if you would like to speak.
Can't hear you.
Mr. Singh?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, thanks for letting me speak. I just have one question. I do appreciate Tesco is proposing to have additional door just to protect their own safety and segregate their customers entering into business boundary code. But would they have any control of other doors? Because every business has a different opinion regarding to opening time, such as Royal Mail wants to open till 8 o'clock. We have another company, I think it's Unit 16, sells hot food. They have Uber driver going about 50 Uber driver going in and out throughout the night till 10 o'clock. And some of the businesses are closed 5:30. So that place is absolutely maze. So the point all I'm trying to make, if somebody to buy alcohol there and they find an immediate place to consume it with a bad attention, I'm not saying everybody would, but there's always a bad apple. And if they want to consume within there, then they find a good place. How would they prevent this happening? I do understand that there will be a CCTV camera, but how would this prevent crime is not taking place? Because even the police is involved. They could not have a control over the doors by shutting down the doors because as everybody have different timing, chosen timing to access to the building. So I do and would like to make a point that this needs to be really considered security for the other businesses, because this place is purely industrial unit office and not a retail, or I would say not a shop. They have converted into retail as a planning without a notifying member of public, because it's converting from class class B to class.
Mr. Singh, this is not a matter.
Yeah, that's not planning. That's fine.
Please.
The question I would like to ask: would they have any control of other door of people entering in the business boundary code?
Mr. Rees-Gay, have you got any comment on that?
Yeah, I believe we're in summaries, but my understanding is that with the gates going to the back of the car park area, and Hardeesh will correct me if I'm wrong, it will create a self-contained Tesco's unit that Tesco's will be able to operate and manage through training policies.
I agree to this, but there are obviously there's two more doors where people can enter, and from the fence where Tesco is proposing, people can seek through what is behind these doors. Obviously, it's it's not a complete shed. It's an automatic door which they propose. The point I'm trying to make: there's other two doors people can enter from the main.
Could you show me on the map on the plan where you think these doors are?
If you look at a Google map on Church Road, there's two more doors. Obviously, there's a main gate.
Obviously, sorry, we don't have Google Maps in front of us. Could you do it on the agenda papers?
So that's page 33, I think. Yes, it is.
Page 33 shows the map in relation to your proposed store, Mr. Rees-Gay, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
that plan is only to show Tesco itself, not the complete business boundary. So I have made a request to licensing to please visit, because as soon as they visit, they would see a problem.
Where on the plan do you think these extra doors are? Obviously, Tesco's will take responsibility for that Tesco unit in red, the car parking to the right within the gated area.
Yeah. Do you agree there will be additional door for other member of public entering into business boundary code, or you're stopping them there?
Yeah, without wanting to interrupt too much, I think this really is a planning issue.
No, I mean, what I'm trying to say is
a very valid issue. It's a valid issue.
Yeah, there's a 3 doors. I'm sorry, I'm really interrupting you. I apologize. The point I'm trying to make is they have 3 doors where public can enter to the premises, and if they have a bad detention, they can just walk inside. Tesco would be preventing letting them go in by 1 door, but there are 2 additional doors. So there's a breach of security to other businesses. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's Mr. Singh, thank you for that. Is there any response from Mr. Rees-Gay at this moment in time?
Well, I believe there's only one public entrance to the premises,
Yes.
and that's the one shown on page 34 up by the
And
disabled car spot.
that is on the assumption the gates have been moved back.
Correct.
Thank you. And as Councillor Draper has quite properly pointed out, we've strayed back into matters of planning, which is almost inevitable this afternoon, I'm afraid, because of the way this application has come to us ahead of any planning decisions. So, anybody else wish to make a very brief comment?
Yes. Can I please?
Yes. Ms. Manager.
Yes, I'm about to speak. Sorry, I'm just thinking a little bit about what Mr. Singh was talking about. He's obviously worried about the safety of his estate, where he has a business, etc., etc. But there are other access points to this, and I think that Mr. Rees-Gay should actually know about those. You're creating your own little area at the end there. You've got the other set of double gates. You've got other little access right in the middle. And clearly you don't know about that, and which just actually makes our point really that not enough people know this estate to actually, give an opinion as to what should go on. It's not very satisfactory. I'm sorry, that's it. I end my case there.
Sorry, just to respond to that, I know Tesco's case, and Tesco's case is the one entrance and the car park being gated off, and that's obviously what we're interested in here today in front of the licensing application, not planning elements that have been discussed elsewhere.
Yeah,
I'm now going to ask. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. I just want to say it was not actually a planning issue. It was access within few feet from Tesco's newfound entrance that people can get onto the estate. That's what we're trying to say. It's not secure.
Mr. Rees-Gay, is there anything you can add to that?
Chair, in my summary, I will cover the hidden areas.
Would you like to move to?
That's fine.
I think we're getting to the point. I think we've got to the point that you should now be invited to make your closing statement.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I would request that the committee disregard all references to the planning and those elements that were not covered by written representations before us in the pack today. Secondly, in terms of the hidden areas, again, I say that there is no evidence that there will be issues created by these areas, and indeed they have always existed. As agreed with the police, there is a full CCTV condition which is enforceable, and indeed an incident report log condition that has been agreed. And as Hardish has stated, staff are trained to look out for crime within the store. As set out within the operating schedule, a store manager will ordinarily be present at any time the store is open. Should there be any issues, and we say that there won't be, Tesco's does always work with other businesses, interested parties and responsible authorities to deal with these issues. The gate that has been discussed will make Tesco's a self-contained store with that one access point for its customers and will be responsible for the management of that store, training and staff to ensure that crime and disorder is certainly not added to. The committee will be aware that the licensing law is not the primary mechanism for the general control of nuisance and antisocial behaviour by individuals once they are away from the licensed premises, and therefore beyond the direct control of what Tesco's as premises license holder will have. In terms of Tesco's themselves, we say that they are a premium operator who are well trained to promote the licensing objectives, and in particular to this application, section 142 and the sale of alcohol to drunks and those issues with street drinkers. And then secondly, that's also been mentioned, the Think 25 policy that's in place that I've been through at length in relation to underage sales and the protection of children from harm. There are no outstanding representations from the responsible authorities, and in particular, we say the police, which relates to crime and disorder. The store will bring much needed employment in these uncertain times. And as stated, the store manager will liaise and work with the businesses within the business court should the issues that are alleged arise. Importantly, there is no evidence to support the crime and disorder allegations made against Tesco store, and the granting of the application today must be made on the evidence before you, of which we say there is no negative evidence as per the Thwaites decision. The decision today should be made in the light of the promotion of the 4 licensing objectives and not the planning objectives. And indeed, should the license be granted, we would say due to the operating schedule and the conditions agreed with the responsible authorities, Tesco's would not add to the cumulative impact. Should, and we say there will not be any issues, there are obviously the powers of review available to interested parties and responsible authorities. Chair, those are my submissions.
I'm most grateful to you, Mr. Rizgay, for the succinct way in which you've completed your application. And I, at this stage, would like to thank everybody that's participated this afternoon. I do apologise for the difficulties I've created for you by disappearing, but in good Harry Potter, I've reappeared thanks to assistance with my technology. And so I have got to the point, I think, where I can safely say that this hearing is now going to be closed. I would like to thank again everybody for their participation. What is going to happen now is that this subcommittee, which consists of the 3 councillors, with our legal advisor present to help us if where necessary, will now go into a closed session so that we can make our decisions. You will all be notified within 5 working days of the decisions that we make this afternoon in our private conversation. So I close, therefore, this licensing panel of the London Borough of Merton, and I thank everybody again for their participation, and my colleagues and I will rejoin together in a few moments. Thank you all very much indeed.